Hello, my name is Peter Farago. Mike Hurst has very kindly asked me to tell a story. The default position is to think I don't really know what to tell a story about. I met Mike 12 years ago and worked with him and have great respect for his inspiration and for his innovation, and this little exercise is probably part of that. As to how wise his choice has been in picking me to tell a story remains to be seen. I live in a place called Venus Bay, which is in the southernmost tip of the mainland of Australia. This is my office. That's part of the Rogues Gallery. There's a few books there. There's a lot of books there. There's an outside, and it's pretty untamed in some ways. The ocean is about 5 minutes walk that way. The inlet's that way, probably about 20-minute walk. In fact, the whole area is surrounded by water, and we're on a spit, and it's very quiet. It's very isolated. Isolated is not the right word, but it's very easy to enjoy solitude here. And about 4 months ago, in January, we were very much, well, this part of the world was very much in the news with the horrendous bushfires. At the same time, we had hailstorms with hailstones as big as cricket balls in some cases. We had drought, we had flood, and we had dust storm, which caused the rains that followed to rain red mud. And I remember writing to someone saying all we need now is the contagion and the 7 plagues of Egypt, and keep your eyes peeled for Moses, because it was like one thing after another. Our water had been fouled by the smoke. We have drinking water in tank, so we had no drinking water. We have very good bore water, which runs the house. But so it's been quite a testing period, and now in this period of restriction and lockdown due to the pandemic, a lot of people find themselves struggling with being restricted from their normal activities. It's pretty much business as usual for me. I'm really enjoying it. It has been quite devastating in terms of my workflow, but that's simply how it is. So in thinking about what to talk about, I can tell a story or two, but I don't think the stories are that interesting, really. Probably not. But what I thought might be of use is by simply telling a story. It's not the content of the story so much as perhaps the way I see things. And that's of no consequence to anyone, except it is a way of seeing things, and it may be interesting. It may be. So this is my point of departure for telling a story, and that is to think about probably the most significant thing that's happened in the last 2 days. And the most significant thing that happened to me in the last 2 days is I got angry. I got very angry. I got angry with my wife, who lives up in Melbourne. We still commute, visit each other, spend time. We're a family. It's good. But she was telling me what she thinks needs to happen in terms of some work that needs to be done on the house, and I think differently. And I got angry. And the anger was debilitating, really. That sense of contentment that I've been enjoying was gone. So, my story begins there. And it begins with a question. And the question is, how do you catch monkeys? Well, the answer is with a monkey trap. Yeah, of course, some of you knew this. And a monkey trap is like a pot, which is shaped thus, and it's got a narrow neck. It's got some nuts put in it, which the monkey can see. The monkey puts its hand in the pot, grabs the nuts, forms a fist, and then tries to withdraw its fist from the pot, and it can't. And because the pot is tied to a tree or semi-buried in the ground, the monkey is caught. The monkey is caught by its desire for the nuts. And then, of course, the monkey hunter comes along and captures the monkey and takes it to a zoo. And, of course, all of us know that the zoos of this world are full of monkeys picking fleas out of each other's bottoms because they wouldn't let go of the nuts. Well, there is an addendum to this story, which I discovered from a very ancient source. And that is that a consultant monkey comes in. This is before the monkey hunter has turned up. And the consultant monkey says, "What's wrong, monkey one?" And monkey one says, "Well, I'm stuck, consultant monkey. I can't get out of this pot." And consultant monkey says, "Oh, I can help you get out." "Oh, really, consultant monkey? How?" said monkey one. "Well, it's going to cost you 6 nuts. "Now, hang on a minute," says monkey one. "That's too many. Oh, my nuts!" And there our monkey remains. Now, the significance of the metaphor is that in this instance, monkey one was held by the desire for the nuts and was unable to surrender that desire for the nuts. So what's this to do with my original statement about anger? Well, according to Bhagavad Gita, which is a very ancient text from the Hindu tradition, or pre-Hindu tradition really, written in the Sanskrit, and it was originally referred to as Smriti, which is a text written by an author and means memory. But anyway, the Bhagavad Gita is a dialogue, and in that dialogue, some very important questions are asked and answered. We can talk about this some more another time if anyone's interested in taking these stories further. So part of the dialogue talks about the way the mind works. Now, this is based on ancient texts and is said to be a record of that which has been observed by those which were sufficiently developed to be able to observe what goes on in the mind. And they suggest that the anger, the very cause of anger, is desire. Now, how is that so? Well, desire is what connects us with anything in this world, any object, any idea, person. And the opposite of desire is aversion. So, I can look at this screen in front of me and go, "I really like this screen," and that is, I'm going to look after it and polish it after I've finished talking into it. Or I can say, "I don't like this screen," and I can ignore it totally and let it quietly dissolve through misuse or disuse, as is what happens to things when they're left to their own devices for long enough. So desire and aversion are like two ends of a continuum, of which there is no real definition. But more desire, if we go this way, more desire is simply less aversion. Less aversion is more desire. And then there's a third point, which is described as I don't care about it, so I'm simply not interested in something. So I desire it, I have an aversion to it, greater or lesser, or I simply don't care about it. So the theory is that we're attached to objects of sense, that is what we can pick up through our senses, through desire. And what happens when our desire is thwarted, when what we want is in some way frustrated, generally when asked, people will say they experience frustration, sometimes disappointment, often anger, which is what frustration really is. So when desire is thwarted, there is anger. Now, the thing about anger, what the ancient sages would say, is that it is productive of delusion. So we then can no longer see things as they are. Now, when you can't see things as they are, you can't meet them as they are, and you can't deal with them as they are. You deal with it as you think it is. And if, in the case of yesterday, I'm angry, then I can't write something that I wanted to write because I'm still dealing with the anger. And so what's going on in the mind is there is this play or replay of what's taken place. So once the delusion sets in, the next stage, should this cycle of mental activity continue, the next stage is where we experience loss of memory. And it's not a case of where did I put the car keys, although it could effectively be that. It's really a case of forgetting who I am. Now, what does that mean? Who I am. Does it mean I forget my name? No. Does it mean I forget what I look like? No. It means that thing that I would hold dear in terms of that which means most, my sense of self, my presence, that which I consider to be good, that which I consider to be true, is completely compromised, and I behave and operate on a whole different platform made up of ideas and beliefs. In this case, I'm annoyed that my wife didn't see it the way I saw it. We've actually had a very good conversation about it since, but that's not the point. The point was I didn't get what I wanted, and I got angry. It's as simple as that. The next stage after loss of memory is what's described as being loss of reason. Now, Shakespeare describes reason as being the crowning glory or fundamental power, most sovereign power, in fact. And characters like Macbeth and characters like Hamlet demonstrate what happens when reason is foregone or not used. Reason by the wise is described, when I say the wise, it's teachers of any number of traditions would say that reason is that capacity to decide the truth of a thing, the rightness or wrongness of it, the goodness or badness of it. So it's the power of the intellect, and it's to be distinguished from just thinking, plain thinking. I mean, I did a lot of thinking about stuff when I was angry, and the capacity to reason was very much reduced. So loss of reason is described as the loss of the ability to tell that which is true or false, good or bad, right or wrong. In fact, to discriminate. And discriminate is a word that is misused very much these days. It actually means out of crime. So discriminating most effectively is to actually come out of wrong thinking, you could say. The following stage of this mental cycle is destruction. So the situation is then completely upended and chaos ensues in one form or another, which is exactly what happens when you've got two people arguing. And in those moments are where many crimes of passion have been known to occur. So in a split moment where anger or fury or rage holds sway, then there is the opportunity for people to behave completely out of character and to do something which is going to impact lives in perpetuity. So, any communication is effectively being broken. Here comes the rain, you may hear it, it's pouring. The fire's burning downstairs, and this conversation is getting a bit long. However, I'll draw it to a close. So what happens is we then say, have this argument, then we feel guilty. Perhaps we've said something we shouldn't, or wished we hadn't, or wished we had and hadn't said it. So there is a desire for satisfaction. If there's guilt, there's a desire to be free of the guilt. So we go back to the cause of the conflict. We might resume the conversation, and because we wish to be free of guilt, because we want to feel content again, we might then apologise for our bad behaviour. But of course our beloved, or whoever in fact it is that we're talking to, may not yet have found themselves ready to forgive, and they may then be more critical than they were before, in which case we take offence and the whole thing starts all over again, because the desire to bring things to rest was thwarted. So, in conclusion, the way out of anger is to let it go. But how do you do that when you're in the midst of it? And that is the subject for the next talk, if there is any desire to have another one. And I won't know that. How do we surrender the nuts when half the time we don't even know we're holding them? I wish you well.